Ford. In Ford's authorized biography, Bulkley testifies as to American split loyalties. Quote, Ford was anti-communist and supported Tito's rival Mihailovich. Tito was a full-blown commie. Mihailovich was the good guy, unquote.
One of the most outspoken officers from OSS who went into the partisan side and who was very openly pro-partisan was the movie actor Sterling Hayden. In his initial report, very flattering about the partisan movement. Even he came to view later, and he said that the idea that there is liberated territory in Yugoslavia by the partisans is, in his words, pure bunkum. That's his phrase. Not a military phrase, but that's his phrase. So the idea that Tito is the liberator of Yugoslavia, I think, flies in the face of the evidence that is there.
Oh, Mr. Bogart, glad to be back.
You said it.
Both did a swell job.
Thank you, Mr. Bogart.
Now, give us a lot of good news.
How are our boys doing? Our boys are doing a great job. On our trip overseas, my wife and I saw thousands of American boys in Africa and Italy, and you can be awfully proud of them.
But as the Allies are getting ready to leave Mihailovich, it turns out they need him more than ever. American planes that bomb Hitler's last remaining oil fields in Romania are shot down by German air defenses over Serbia on their way back to Italy. Mihailovich is the only one who can rescue them.
And the briefing officer explained all the details about the mission and the altitude we would bomb at and so on and so forth. Then he made an interesting comment. And he said, if you have to bail out over Yugoslavia, stay away from the Chetniks and seek out the partisans, because the Chetniks are collaborating with the Germans. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth.
What do you want me to do with them, said Mihailovich. What do you want me to do with them? And that's when Bora made the contact with the Americans, that we had the American airmen there. So that was, that's really, we knew that first. I knew that first.
Gospodar Jevremova, number 5. This is where my family lived in Belgrade. In 1944, my father left here to go to Ravna Gora to join with Mihailovich. And he was there during the rescue of the airmen. Years later in the US, he met the man responsible for that rescue, George Vujnović. This was the last interview he ever gave.
U Bari sam postao šef za operacije. Za sve te avione I podučavanje I treniranje I sve planove.
It was just so well planned by George Vujnović. He was the architect of this great escape.
Kad su Englezi to saznali, oni su rekli Churchillu da ne može da Vujnović ide kod Draže. Ja sam onda išao tomu generalu čiji su to vojnici bili I kaže, ja ne mogu ništa da radim, jer to je englesko područje. Ja kažem, to su vaši vojnici. Da li su to engleska komoda tamo, to ne je ferma. I on je rekao, ja ću onda poslati avione da ih skupi.
By mid-1944, hundreds of U.S. airmen are gathered by Mihailović's commanders from across Yugoslavia and dispatched to his headquarters near Ravna Gora for the airlift. The operation, codenamed Halliard, was classified until recently. Halliard is significant for another reason. The Americans had a camera crew filming the operation. It is the only footage of Mihailovich shot during the war. Archivist Bonnie Rowan discovered the footage at the National Archives in Washington, D.C., 70 years after it was filmed.
At NARA, I work with paper records, I work with photographs, but mostly I work with motion pictures. And when there was nothing that I could find in motion pictures, I went to the paper records, and the paper records are very strong in talking about the various people who worked with Mihailović, what he was accomplishing, various reports from the Office of Strategic Services. And so up to a point, they were very, very positive. And now we found the film.
As the Americans are arriving, the last representative of the British mission leaves Mihailović's headquarters.
It was a very meticulous combing through of many different film reels before we actually uncovered these particular shots. Films give visual evidence of American Special Forces interaction with Mihailović and some of his crews during the Operation Halliard.
A 10-year-old boy comes running up yelling, "Nemci," which meant Germans. So the Chetnik that was with me handed me a homemade hand grenade. I don't know whether I was more frightened of the hand grenade or the Germans. And we went up into the hills, and 2 minutes later the Germans came by, 2 truckloads. They were the kindest people that you could ever want to meet. You know, they greeted us with open arms, contrary to what we were told when we went to briefing.
I kad smo se lepo porazumeli, ja kažem, Amerika je ovdje, na primjer, a oni kažu, Srbija je ovdje, naki mene dođu, raskopčaju mi ovo, ljube mi grudi.
In spite of support from political parties in the country and from the government in exile, Mihailović receives a blow from which Serbia and Yugoslavia never recover. On September 6, 1944, the general and his Chetniks wait for the annual King's birthday speech broadcast on BBC. But the king does not speak that day, a sign that something is wrong. He makes the speech 6 days later, but the subject matter is anything but celebratory. Under pressure from Churchill, the now 21-year-old King Peter publicly disavows General Mihailović and throws his support behind Tito.
Saznali smo u Bosni, kad sam ja rekao kralju Petre, ako si ovo rekao, izdao ovaj proglas, što se nisi ubio, nego si Srbiju sranio.